Welcome to Greek for a Week. I am glad that you are continuing through the study of the book of First Peter along with me. And we are looking at a paragraph this week of chapter 2, verses 4 through 10. And we are looking at a diagram of how this particular passage might fit together. So I want to make note of a couple of things here as we move forward. I just want you to notice that there are several uses of the word for stone, whether it's lithon, here's lithoi. There's also lithon here. There is, again, multiple lithos, multiple uses of the word stone that, if you will, it kind of brings about a continuity to this particular paragraph. And I think it's Peter's way of describing, of course, who Jesus Christ is, and then also as we are related to him, who we are. So as you kind of go through this passage with me here in the next couple of slides, you'll see how Peter then uses the word for stone and uses it for maybe some background information, even some parenthetical information that we can, again, see how this passage is tied together. Okay? All right, so we'll move forward here in verse 4. He says, coming. Participle of means, you could say by coming to him. And then who is the him there? And I think you have an attributive participle there. He is the living stone. So the him is the living stone. And then he has a mende relationship here. Construction, you could say, that I think provides for us some parenthetical information. So he says, on the one hand, this living stone has been rejected by men. Okay, and of course the attributive participle goes back to the him, your accusative here and accusative here. So it goes back to the relative pronoun. But on the other hand, he is near to God as a valuable choice. And I would suggest there that that's parenthetical information. Then we'll get to verse 5. He says, you also, as living stones here, you are what? You are being built up as a spiritual house. So the living stones, this participle here really comes down into the main verb of you are being built up. So by coming to him, what happens? We are being built up. And then also there's a purpose, right? Why or for what purpose are we being built up as a spiritual house, being descriptive of living stones? And that is for a holy priesthood. Again, to, purpose infinitive, to offer up spiritual sacrifices that are acceptable to God. And then, of course, the agency, means by which we are able to do that, is through Jesus Christ. Now, he begins with a causal conjunction here in verse 6, the diati, and I would suggest here that this causal conjunction ties back into the description, the parenthetical description here. So because it is contained in Scripture, well, what's contained? I think, again, he describes the lithos. He describes the stone. Behold, I lay in Zion a chosen and precious cornerstone. And the one who believes in him, that is the stone, will never, remember there was a double negative in that verse when we walked through it a couple weeks ago, will never experience shame. Therefore, this precious value, or this stone here, is for you who believe. But for those who disbelieve, the stone which the builders rejected. So here we're back to the builders rejecting here, as well as men rejecting the stone there. This one, the hutas there, this one became the cornerstone. So we continue then in verse 8. So it's this one became the cornerstone, and we'll see then in verse 8, and what? Also a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense, which they stumble. Why? Because they are disobedient to the word, to which also they were appointed. Okay, this is cool. Verse 9. So those that have rejected the stone and those who were disobedient to the word, now he's going to switch recipients. Now he's going to talk about you. You yourselves, recipients of First Peter, you are what? You are a chosen race. He'll further define that as a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's possession. Again, what's the purpose there? All right, the purpose is so that, right, you proclaim, and what is it that you proclaim? The excellencies. And then it's further described here, further, the excellencies of the one who called you out of darkness and into the marvelous light. Who is this? Who are the you yourselves? Who is the chosen race? Well, he continues to describe them in verse 10. Who once were not a people, but now you are specifically a people of God. Who once had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. So Peter kind of wraps this up to suggest that the relationship between the stone and the living stones really ultimately boils down to the chief cornerstone, which is Jesus Christ. So how might I preach or teach this particular section? I really think you basically have one main point that's going to be described in two ways. The main point is, who are you? What's your identity? How can we describe you? And I think that's Peter's point here is you are the living stones, verses 4 and 5. And then there's further parenthetical information in 6 and 7. So you are the living stones. And then when you get to verses 9 and 10, he says you are specifically the people of God. I think it's quite encouraging to be described this way, to be described as a living stone who will never experience shame, but rather will experience honor. And then we're the people of God who have what? Who have received mercy. Trust this has been helpful. I'll see you next week. We'll start a brand new paragraph in chapter 2, verse 11, and you have a great week.